Assalamu alaikum. We're going to get started soon, inshallah, but before we start, just move up as much as you can. Close all the gaps. It's a long weekend and everybody's off. The kids are off. It's cold outside, so we want to try to fit as many people as we can inside before they go to the heated tent outside. So if somebody's coming late, let them know that the tent is heated, alhamdulillah. Our volunteers have been working hard for the last 2 weeks to have this set up and make sure that everybody's comfortable inside, inshallah. So it is heated, so if you have some family and friends coming a little late, they can pray in there. But move up as much as you can so nobody has to jump over you to take the spot in front of you, inshallah.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar. Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah. Ashhadu an la أشهد أن محمدًا رسول الله أشهد أن محمدًا رسول الله حي على الصلاة حي على الصلاة حي على الفلاح حي على الفلاح الله أكبر الله أكبر لا إله إلا الله اللهم رب هذه الدعوة التامة والصلاة القائمة على محمد النبي وابعثه
إن الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا من يهده الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدًا عبده ورسوله أما بعد فإن أصدق الحديث كتاب الله وخير الهدي هدي محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم وشر الأمور محدثاتها وكل محدثة بدعة وكل بدعة ضلالة وكل ضلالة في النار أما بعد يقول الله عز وجل في القرآن الكريم بعد أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم يا أيها الذين آمنوا اتقوا الله حق تقاته ولا تموتن إلا وأنتم مسلمون وقال تعالى يا أيها الناس اتقوا ربكم الذي خلقكم من نفس واحدة وخلق منها زوجها وبث منهما رجالا كثيرا ونساء واتقوا الله الذي تساءلون به والأرحام إن الله كان عليكم رقيبا ثم أما بعد. I want you to imagine a young student, a young child, 11, 12 years old. This girl, she goes to her new middle school. She's very excited to start at her new middle school. And she goes to school and she sees that all of her classmates, everybody at break time, even in class, they all have smartphones. They all have smartphones. And so this young girl, she doesn't have a smartphone. And so she sees these classmates, they start to make fun of her for not having a phone. So she feels down and she goes home and she begs her parents to get her a phone, and eventually they give in and they get her a phone. She gets a phone, and then they start telling her about, all of the things that they do, all of the apps that they have. So she feels like she needs to download the same apps and be on the same social media platforms that everyone else is on. And when she starts joining them, she starts to see all of the things that they're posting. Right? They're posting about all the fun things they're doing, silly things, fun things, exciting things, places they're going, experiences they're having. And all of these people, they start to, like those images. And they start to like those images and praise those people and their posts. And so this girl, she sees that and she wants to fit in, so she starts posting things also. But they make fun of her for not posting at first. And when she starts posting, they start making fun of her of the things that she's posting, how lame she looks, how unattractive she is, how maybe the way that she looks, or the way that she acts, or the way that the places that she goes and the experiences that she has, because they're not as good as theirs. And she starts feeling down, she starts feeling depressed. And because she wants to be liked, she starts to starve herself so that she can lose weight, so that other people would like her. And she starts becoming malnourished. She's becoming even more unhappy. And they continue to make fun of her. And she's on social media all day. She's looking and looking and looking on how she can make herself more acceptable. She spends hours and hours. In fact, she spends hours of the day and hours of the night trying to figure out how she can be accepted. She's losing sleep. She can't fall asleep. She's depressed, she's sad, she's feeling down. She's malnourished. She's not only physically ill, but she's also mentally ill. And ultimately someone tells her, no one likes you. Why do you even want to continue living in this miserable state? And she does the ultimate act of going further with that suggestion, and she takes her life at the age of 12. This sad story, brothers and sisters, is scary, but it's way too common. It's way too common. There are hundreds and hundreds and hundreds, maybe even thousands of similar cases throughout the world. Maybe more so in the Western world, but throughout the world of similar instances. And I listened to a lot of podcasts and books about, raising children. And something, even after having read almost over a dozen books, I still feel like, I don't have a good grasp on the best things to do for our children. And so I continue to learn, and I was listening to this one researcher. She wrote a book, and she was, we mentioned this in our Ideal Muslim class on Monday nights. And the interviewer asked her, says, of all the research you've done, can you, instead of writing books and books, hundreds and pages, can you give us just in a couple of sentences, in just a few words, maybe one word, of what is the responsibility of the parents towards their children? And she said, I can think of one thing. And she says, if I was to summarize it all, I would say that the responsibility of the parents towards their children is to keep their child safe. That's it, is to keep them safe. Right? And you can apply this in all different ways. You can apply it to the physical sense, you can apply it to their emotional sense, to their financial well-being, to their, ensuring they have food and shelter and clothing, ensuring they have education, their psychological well-being, is to keep them safe in all of these different domains. And subhanAllah, I was thinking about that and I said, what does the Quran and the Sunnah tell us about our responsibility to our children? And I came and I thought, the first verse that I thought of when it comes to your families is the verse in which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He says, Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu qu anfusakum wa ahlikum. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, He says, "O you who believe, save yourselves and your families." Save yourselves and your families. And yes, He goes on to say, save yourselves and your families from the hellfire. But interestingly, is the same word that she used, which is to keep them safe. Is what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is telling us hundreds of years ago, and also continuously on an ongoing basis, as this is a continuous message to us, that we need to save ourselves and our children and our families from the hellfire. And what is interesting about saving them from the hellfire is that whatever is good for them eternally in the next life is good for them in this world. Think of anything in the deen. Think of anything. Think about the 5 pillars. Think about fasting. Think about prayer. Think about going to the masjid. Think about charity. Think about every single element. It makes you stronger. It makes you a better person in this life. And it saves you in the hereafter. So our responsibility, brothers and sisters, towards our children, towards our families, is to keep them safe, to protect them from the hellfire, and that is ultimately going to protect them in this life as well. And as I was talking about this scary story that I started with today, one of the things that we have to keep them safe from is social media, is their smartphones and their smart devices, their computers. And this is something that is so prevalent today. And if you just read the statistics on how much screen time children are getting, adults is a separate topic and also a very concerning topic. But today, because of the holidays, I know the entire families are here today, so I'm going to focus on the children. But this also applies to the adults. They say that between the age of 8 and 12, this is not even when they're teenagers, 8 and 12, that children are spending time on their screens, on their device, whether it's an iPad or phone or whatever, for entertainment, not for school. 5.5 hours a day. Between the ages of 8 and 12. And for those who are 13 to 18, so we would call these, older, teens and younger kids, right? Tweens. The teens from 13 to 18 spend 8.5 hours a day on their screens for entertainment purposes. In other words, not for school. So it's not like they're doing their homework or they're doing classwork and things like that. Can you imagine the amount of time that our children are spending on these devices? Just think about where the 5.5 hours are coming from. Ultimately, they're coming from their time in school, that they're not paying attention to the teacher when they should be. Their time in their breaks, when perhaps they should be running around playing, doing whatever they do at break time, right? And then coming home, and then during the day when they're supposed to be doing homework and other things, when they could be outside playing, right, riding their bicycle, doing physical activity that is good for them. So think about an 8 to 12-year-old. Just imagine, what is a 12-year-old? What do they need to watch for 5.5 hours of the day? And what are they watching for those 5.5 hours of the day? And our teenagers, 8.5 hours. 8.5 hours. Where do they find this time from? So imagine the amount of time wastage And there are so many statistics. I see the time is flying, and I want to get to, inshallah, sharing some tips with all of us on how we can improve this. But I want to make sure that we understand the severity of the problem. And you're not going to understand it fully with a 20-minute khutbah, because this topic is very deep. They say 50%, almost 50% of children, of teenagers, are on the internet almost constantly. Almost constantly. In other words, they don't put it down. Like, the only time they have the phone in the hand, they'll put it down to look at the road when they're crossing. Almost constantly, they are looking at their devices. They're on the internet. Whether it's playing video games, whether it's being on social media, whether it's doing something else, watching videos. So almost constantly, almost half of children. 11 to 15-year-olds, 1/3 or more say they feel they're addicted to social media. They feel like they're addicted. They can't put it down. There's actually a reason for that, and we'll talk about that in a moment. More than 60% of teens are exposed to hate material every day. 60%. More than half of people see something hateful every day. Somebody saying you're ugly, you're stupid, you're dumb, you're like this, you're like that. Saying something, maybe bullying other people, maybe saying some, Islamophobic things, or even just racist things, just things in general, negative, hateful things. And that's the exposure that we give them. So imagine that's more than half the time they're experiencing this. Right? 60% of the time. Interestingly, teenagers say that social media, almost half of them say, makes them feel worse. Makes them feel worse. But they're just addicted to it. And so when you think, let's say you say, I have 4 children, by statistics, half of your children are going to feel worse with social media. Half of them are addicted. Half of them feel they need to get, these statistics apply to your children as much as they apply to anybody else's. And so it's important that we take this very seriously. And this one was shocking, almost 60% of teenage girls say they've been contacted by a stranger on social media, and that there's something that made them uncomfortable, in an uncomfortable way. Right? And this is something, if you were to take your daughter to the mall, right? And you would be so protective of her, like, stay right here, don't go over there. You're gonna go over there? Okay, I'm gonna stand here and watch you. We have this sense of I'm protecting, I'm watching her, she's only 12, she's 13, she's young, I'm gonna make sure I keep her safe. Yeah, for those 5 minutes that you're at the mall with her, or at the store. But all the other 8 hours of the day that she's on her device, you have no idea what is going on. You have no idea what they're watching, what they're exposed to. No idea. Some parents can't even imagine the kind of stuff that their children are watching. And I know that the children that are listening, the youth that are listening, they know I'm right. Even though the parents are like, no, I think I have an idea. No, you don't. No, you don't. And that's the shocking thing. You can't even imagine these kinds of things. Excessive social media problems lead to sleep problems, attention problems. Physiologically, what's interesting, I'm a researcher, and neurology and neuroscience happens to be my specialty, so I can bore you guys a lot with this, but I want to say, they looked at brain scans of people, of children and adults who use social media. And what they found was that their brains look very similar to the brains of people who are addicted to drugs. Their brains look very similar to people who are addicted to drugs. And this is, so when adults feel like, this is not bothering me, this is not affecting me, I can stop at any time. It's like, it's very common when you hear somebody, somebody who smokes cigarettes, you tell them, you should stop smoking. It's like, I can stop anytime. Right? I don't want to, but I can stop anytime. That's the way we think about social media. I don't, it doesn't bother me, it doesn't affect me, but it affects us. It affects us so much, and there are chemical effects that it's having in your brain. When you watch something, you see a video like, this is cool, right? You click on that, you watch it. The chemical that gets released in the brain, it's called dopamine. It's the same chemical that gets released when a cocaine addict takes a cocaine hit. So when you watch the next video, you get a little more dopamine. You watch the next one, you get more dopamine. So what happens is you get addicted with the same chemical that's being released in your brain that a drug addict gets when they take drugs. And so over time, your brain just gets used to it. And they're actually, and you can prove this to yourself, if your phone was sitting in the corner of your house on the table or something and you were sitting on the sofa, if you hear a buzz of your phone, it makes you anxious. It makes you anxious because you don't know who just messaged you. You want to see that message right now. You want to see that message right now, and it just bothers you. If it's in your phone, the phone's in your pocket, you feel that buzz, right? And that anxiety, that just shows you that there are chemicals in your brain that are being affected by these devices, by these platforms. And a child's brain, brothers and sisters, a child's brain continues to develop until adult. Like imagine giving an 8-year-old, some alcohol, or giving them some cigarettes to smoke, or some drugs. Something we could never fathom doing that, but we do it. We give them something even worse than that, right? Because those other things, they're hard to get, right? Drugs are hard to get. Cigarettes are hard to get for young people, right? We make those things hard to get. But this thing, we facilitate for our children. And so we are harming them in this way. And so there are a lot of things that get affected. Our attention is affected. And you know that when you're driving, you're constantly focusing, you're thinking about your phone, who's messaging me, who's calling me, right? And there's a lot of studies that show this. In fact, they showed this, they did this study where they gave participants, they gave them something to read, a page, like an article to read, and they checked their stress levels. They hooked them up to monitors to check their stress levels. And their phone was sitting in the corner. So every time their phone buzzed, they saw in the monitor that their stress level increased and their reading comprehension decreased. This is scientifically proven. Whatever they were reading, they were like failing on the test on the parts that they were reading. So their reading comprehension decreased and their stress levels. Why? Because the phone is sitting in the corner and just beeped. And this is happening to us daily, maybe dozens of times a day. Dozens of times. And we've become accustomed to it, right? And we don't even think about it. And so, and we start feeling withdrawal sometimes. Like if you don't have your phone, like imagine you left your phone at home and you went to work. All day you're going to be like looking for your, and there's this thing called phantom buzz. I don't know if you've heard of it, phantom buzz. If you don't have your phone in your pocket's still buzzing. You don't have your phone in your pocket, your pocket's still buzzing. Why? Because your mind just makes it up. Because you've been getting it so often. It makes it up. And sometimes, a lot of times, you'll look at your phone, and you look again, and you look again, and there's nobody messaging you, but you just keep looking. Right? And so this is, I really, I can't get into, there's so many, neurological effects of these platforms and these devices on us. There's also not just neurological effects. There's also direct radiation coming from the phone. There is radiation in all of these devices. There's radiation. So when you put it on your body, right? You put it in your pocket. It is the worst thing to do is to put it in your pocket. Absolutely the worst. In fact, there have been numerous studies showing that men who put their phones in their pocket, let's just say, their reproductive organs are affected. I think you guys will understand that. So, there are so many physical and mental effects of these platforms, of social media, of just the phones themselves. And so we need to be careful of how we use these things, and we need to make sure that we're able to protect ourselves and our children. And may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala help us and make it easy for us. Anything good is from Allah, anything wrong is from myself. May Allah forgive me and all of you. الحمد لله الذي هدانا لهذا وما كنا لنهتدي لولا أن هدانا الله الصلاة والسلام على رسول الله وعلى آله وصحبه ومن والاه أما بعد. A few things now, I want you to think about, you're walking by the shore, by the beach, right? And you see a fish that's flopping right on the water. The water came out, the wave, and it brought the fish out. And the fish is flopping around, right? And so somebody says, well, look, this fish is drowning. We need to move it away from the water. Says what? Look, this fish, it looks like it's drowning. We need to move it away from the water. So this person, it moves it away from the water. And what happens to the fish? The fish dies, right? The way we interact with our children when it comes to these kinds of technologies is exactly that way. We don't know what is killing them, but we are doing it and facilitating it for them. It is killing their brains, it's killing their psyche, it is killing them physically, it is affecting them at every level, brothers and sisters. And we are like that person who moves the fish away from the water. So when we start thinking about what should we do, there are several things to do. Number one is when it comes to device usage, okay, the usage of these devices. Number one, there are two things you have to remember. Number one is if your kids don't have a device, don't get them one. If your kids, and when I say a kid, I mean I would say essentially under the age of 16. Under the age of 16, Australia just passed a law where they're trying to pass a law where they're banning everyone from under the age of 16 from using a device. And even then, I would say maybe 18 or even older. Okay? But I would say no less than 16 should not have a device. And even if they do, then you need to follow some of the other suggestions that I'm going to give you. So number one, if they don't have a device, don't give them. You know, when our children make us really, really proud, you know, they get honor roll, they get, valedictorian, they get something really, really good, right? They memorize the Quran, they win a competition. You know what we want to give them? We want to give them a phone or an iPad. We can't think of another good gift, right? Like, oh, you know what? I know. I'm going to give them a phone. I'm going to give them an iPad, right? Absolutely the worst thing you can do for them. It's just like taking that fish away from the water and saying you're trying to save it, right? And that analogy is very apt because we think we're doing something. It sounds so silly, and we think we're doing something good, yet we're doing the exact opposite. So, and now let's say your children have a device, and still, for most children, for most parents, I would say the best thing to do is to take the device away. That's it. There's no let me do this, let me do that. The harms outweigh the benefits so much that I would say you take the device away. And a lot of people feel that that might be too difficult for them to do. So I will mention a few things. When you say how much is the right dose, how much is the right amount, is as like asking what is the right dose of poison for my kid. How much should I give them? 1 teaspoon, 1.5? Like, you would never ask that. You would never say, here is, my child is, sucking on these batteries and it has a toxin in it. How many batteries can he suck on? I'm giving you silly examples because this is the way we think, brothers and sisters. Unfortunately, it's come down to this. That we start thinking, how much, so for most, the vast majority of children, all of children should not have these devices. But if they already have them, then we need to do several things. Number one is never, ever allow your child to take the device into their room. Let me say it a different way. Never, ever allow your child to be alone with a device. So, yes, you say, well, my son already gave him a device, my daughter already gave her a phone. What do I do now? That's it. That's your rule. Your rule is whenever you want to use your phone, sit in the living room and use it. This is where we all sit. And your screen should be facing the doorway so that everybody, whoever walks in, can see your screen. And this is not impossible. Our children, when they use the computers for work, for school work, right? They have to sit themselves in a way so that whenever you're walking into the room, the person can see the screen. It's just, if they can't figure that out, you take the computer away from them. Say, why don't you grow up a little bit, figure this out. Right? So this is very, very important for us to do. Never, ever allow them to be alone with a device. Number two, never use the device to babysit your child. And this is something we see a lot. A tired father comes from work. After a long day of work, he comes home, and his son comes up to him and he says, "Oh, Baba, let's go. Let's go ride a bike." He says, no, I'm too tired. Okay, let's play this game. He says, oh, I'm too tired. And then, and then the same father, the next day he comes home and he sees his son sitting in the corner and just watching videos on his phone. He says, oh, mashallah, such a good boy. He's not bothering me. This is our state, brothers and sisters. And don't tell me that I'm exaggerating. Because this is how we think of a good kid as the one who is sitting quietly, addicted to video games and watching things online. So never ever allow these devices to babysit your child. Find somebody else to do it. Never these devices. Other things to consider, always leave privacy settings on. You need to know, if you are not computer savvy, you don't know technology, you need to make sure you have an app installed on there that you know what are all the things that your child, what they have access to. Some people are like, oh, I know their password, I can log on anytime. Yeah, and they can watch it and delete it. They can do it and delete it. So, your kids are much more savvy and sharp and smart smarter than you think. So there are many of these things that are, I never say never, but these are the never things. You never leave them alone with a device. So you as a parent need to set, these rules in the house, and you need to enforce them. And if they don't want to enforce the rules, then you just take the device away, right? And sometimes that's difficult to do. And the second thing that you need to do is build an attachment with your children. Is to build an attachment with your children. And that needs to be your takeaway from today. One, obviously we know devices are bad. Probably you knew that before, right? But the more important thing to walk away with today is they are attached to their devices, to their friends, and to people that they don't know. But they need to be attached to you. They need to be attached to you. They need to be attached to you. And how do you develop that love? How do you develop that connection? Right? Praise them, compliment them, say good words to them, right? Do something nice with them. So, if they want to bike, go do biking with them. If a bike is broken, go fix it for them. Imagine your son has not used his bike for so long because it was broken. And one day you say, look, I just got it fixed for you. Right? Stuff like that. Do things for them that is going to make them feel good. Say words that are going to make them feel good. Give them a gift. Give them something nice, something thoughtful. Something that they wanted. It doesn't have to be a phone or a device, but give them something that they wanted. Right? Take them shopping. Buy them, clothes, or buy them things that they want, shoes, things that are good for them. Right? Number four, give them physical touch. And we see this again and again in the Sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ and other places where the Prophet ﷺ, he would just grab somebody or hold them or touch them. And again, for me personally, one of the things I love doing with my kids is when I come in the home, shake their hands. And for me, just that touch of shaking my child's hand, is good for me. Is one of my favorite things to do. And so maybe your child is like that. They haven't been touched. Just ask yourself, when was the last time you really sincerely, lovingly touched your child? Think about it, because for some of us, it's been weeks since we touched lovingly our child, right? And sometimes people want that, just like when a baby's born, they do skin to skin with the mother and the father. Why? Why on a baby that's not even a day old? Because we know there's science and research to support that. And lastly, spending quality time with them. Spending quality time with them. Of all the things that you can talk about that you can do with your children, for your children, to make them love you, spending quality time with them is the best thing that you can do. And so in conclusion, brothers and sisters, we make dua for ourselves and for our children and our families and the ummah. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala protect us and our children and give us the ability to protect ourselves and our children from the hellfire and prosper in this life and in the hereafter. In conclusion, when you walk away from this talk, I want you to think about two things. One is the harms of social media, but number two is the attachment that we need to develop with our children, with our families. And so make sure every day that you're doing something to develop that attachment. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala accept our efforts. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala guide us, give us the ability to learn and to educate ourselves on the best way to be with our children. with our neighbors, with our friends, with our families. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala accept all the good that we do and overlook our shortcomings. ربنا تقبل منا إنك أنت السميع العليم وتب علينا إنك أنت التواب الرحيم. ربنا ظلمنا أنفسنا وإن لم تغفر لنا وترحمنا لنكونن من الخاسرين. اللهم إنك عفو تحب العفو فاعف عنا. اللهم إنك عفو تحب العفو فاعف عنا. ربنا آتنا في الدنيا حسنة وفي الآخرة حسنة وقنا عذاب النار. اللهم انصر الإسلام والمسلمين. اللهم انصر الإسلام والمسلمين. اللهم انصر الإسلام والمسلمين في كل مكان يا رب العالمين. سبحان ربك رب العزة عما يصفون وسلام على المرسلين والحمد لله رب العالمين. And straighten your rows.
الله أكبر الله أكبر أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن محمدا رسول الله حي على الصلاة حي على الفلاح قد قامت الصلاة قد قامت الصلاة الله أكبر لا إله إلا الله.
الله أكبر. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين آمين. والضحى والليل إذا سجى ما ودعك ربك وما قلى وللآخرة خير لك من الأولى ولسوف يعطيك ربك فترضى ألم يجدك يتيما فآوى ووجدك ضالا فهدى ووجدك عائلا فأغنى فأما اليتيم فلا تقهر وأما السائل فلا تنهر وأما بنعمة ربك فحدث. الله سمع الله لمن حمده. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين، الرحمن الرحيم، مالك يوم الدين. إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين. اهدنا الصراط المستقيم، صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين. آمين. ألم نشرح لك صدرك ووضعنا عنك وزرك الذي أنقض ظهرك ورفعنا لك ذكرك فإن مع العسر يسرا، إن مع العسر يسرا. فإذا فرغت فانصب وإلى ربك فارغب. الله أكبر. سمع الله لمن حمده. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله.
Assalamu alaikum. Just we're going to pray Asr inshallah as soon as the time comes in, but if you are blocking someone, you have to move your car inshallah. Two requests for dua, actually three of them. Three requests for dua. One of the young brother from our community, Yusuf, who passed away this week, and also this brother Ahmed, who's being treated for cancer, and then one of our brothers from the community, Mansoor, his grandfather just passed away today. Tuesday. So we're going to ask Sheikh to make dua for all of them, inshallah.
اللهم صل على محمد في الأولين وصل على محمد في الآخرين وصل على محمد في الملأ الأعلى إلى يوم الدين. اللهم اغفر لهم وارحمهم يا رب العالمين. اللهم باعد بينهم وبين خطاياهم كما بعدت بين المشرق والمغرب. اللهم نقهم من الخطايا والذنوب كما ينقى الثوب الأبيض من الدنس. اللهم اغسلهم من خطاياهم بالماء والثلج والبرد. اللهم إن كانوا محسنين فزد بإحسانهم وإن كانوا مسيئين فتجاوز عن سيئاتهم. اللهم أبدلهم دارا خيرا من دارهم وأهلا خيرا من أهلهم. اللهم اجعل قبرهم روضة من رياض الجنة ولا تجعل حفرة من حفر النيران. اللهم أسكنهم الفردوس الأعلى مع النبيين والصديقين والشهداء والصالحين وحسن أولئك رفيقا. اللهم اغفر لصغيرنا وكبيرنا وذكرنا وأنثانا وشاهدنا وغائبنا وحينا وميتنا. اللهم لا تفتنا بعدهم ولا تحرمنا أجرهم، واغفر لنا ولهم ولموتى المسلمين أجمعين. وصلى الله على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه.